Welcome to Empowering Plans, a show dedicated to identifying waste and undue expense in the health benefits industry, discovering ways to maximize benefits while minimizing costs, and empowering employers, administrators, and consultants to emphasize once again the benefit in benefit plan. Today's episode is brought to you by Payer Compass, delivering plan savings through accurate real-time claim pricing. Now here are your hosts, the Phia Group's CEO, Adam Russo, Senior Vice President and General Counsel, Ron Peck, and Director Attorney, Brady Brazzaro.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Empowering Plans with the Phia Group. I am your co-host, Adam Russo, and with me, as always, is my good friend, the Senior VP and General Counsel of the Phia Group, Ron Peck. Say hello, Ron.
Hello, Ron, you lucky guy.
Whoa. Wait a second. What is that, you lucky guy?
I am just so privileged to be here.
And now, our newest co-host, it's one of our best attorneys here at the Phia Group. Say hello to Brady Brazzaro. Say hello, Brady.
Hello, Brady.
Folks, so today we actually have a special guest. We'll introduce him in a second. But before I do that, as you all know, we love Texas here at the Phia Group, right? For whatever reason, it's like, 50% of our business resides in that particular state. But once I actually looked, I Googled it, like 30 of the states in our country literally can fit within Texas. Like I think that Rhode Island is like the size of Dallas. I don't even know. I actually believe that. But the reason I bring it up is I just came back from the beautiful city of Laredo. Laredo is literally on the Rio Grande River. It borders Mexico. The ranch I was staying at, I was hitting golf balls into Mexico. But the reason I bring this up is when I came back, I actually believe the stuff that I did in Laredo would actually put me in jail here in Massachusetts. Our next guest, our special guest today, is a great man, a good friend of ours, a good friend of mine, a good friend of the Phia Groups, by the name of Greg Everett. Greg is the president and CEO of Payer Compass. Greg's worked in the managed care and healthcare software business for over 25 years for both provider and payer organizations such as VHA, Aetna, health plans, and a suburban Dallas hospital and physician organization. So, Greg, welcome to the show. We appreciate it. First thing I want to ask you, what's behind the name? Because you know what the funny thing is? So I keep, we worked with you for a long time, Payer Compass. But then you actually listen to the name, Payer Compass. How'd you guys come up with that name, and what's the story behind it?
Okay, so we bought the assets of a company called ChartTech out of Chicago, working with a reimbursement company there. And in the process, we needed to have a name that was directional as to where we're trying to go from a reimbursement standpoint. And so Payer Compass came to mind. We went through a couple of names in generating it, but we were looking for a euphemism for where reimbursement needed to go, and Payer Compass fit the bill.
Speaking of stories, what is the story of your company? Why did you get involved in this business? Just give us a little bit of the history and of what you thought you were going to be, what you've actually become, and then a little bit on how reference-based pricing and just repricing claims has changed since you've been in the business.
Okay, we first started off with understanding what TPAs were looking for in reference pricing back in 2007. There was a meeting, 2007, 2008 timeframe. They were looking for an answer around their PPO problem. Their PPO problem, discounts don't really matter. And so they started using Medicare as a basis for pricing, mostly within some contractual situations. Then they decided that many of these TPAs wanted to just pay off of a plan document. Having been in managed care arena for a very long time, I was concerned about what everybody's concerned about is balanced bills and how that works in a non-contractual situation where you're paying off of a plan document. And so we researched further, went out with a few TPAs in 2010 with our friends at ChartTech, initially trying to find a mechanism that we could distribute our reimbursement technology. We thought we could just give the technology to the TPAs and they could create their own solutions. Some TPAs did, some TPAs did not. We were looking for partners in the process, and that led us to two companies, yours, obviously, and then the other company that we ended up buying down in Florida, IMRM, Innovative Medical Risk Management, kind of a mouthful. They were our patient advocacy company as well. So those three companies really came together and formed what is the product, our Innovate 360 reference-based pricing product in the marketplace.
So how has RBP changed?
I'd say that the biggest changes are it's a wider use concept in the marketplace. We have 700 to 800 groups that are doing it across the country. That would be one. Two, hospitals have voiced their opinion around reference pricing. It's harder to do today than it was some years ago, but with more lasting results around it. There's more direct contracting, there's more physician advocacy than we saw early on, and greater savings as a part of the process as more and more employer groups have signed on for RBP.
So I could tell you this. I mean, there are many different, reference-based pricing companies out there. There are some TPAs that do this in-house. There are many vendors available, and they all say they're the best, right? I mean, everyone says we're the best. Here's why we're the best. What makes you different? So forget the best, right? What makes you different than the rest of the people out there in this crowded field?
There are three pillars to our program: technology, patient advocacy, and legal balance billing support. Those are the three pillars that form the foundation of our company's product. Like a three-legged stool, those three pillars are required in order to have a strong product in the marketplace. We believe our technology, doing everything associated with pricing. We develop our own pricing technology. We don't take the technology from another vendor. We don't buy it from another vendor. We built that software ourselves. We believe that's a core component. It allows us to be very competitive with our pricing since we own that technology.
Now, I know the third leg is, obviously Phia, so I'm not going to get into that. We know we're the best, right, Ron? Right, Brady? We know that. Okay?
That's what my parents tell me.
Right, so let's forget that one for a second. But patient advocacy, that to me is the most important piece of this whole thing. What makes your patient advocacy different?
Okay, there's two aspects to our patient advocacy company. So IMRM, who we purchased in 1/1/2016, they were a vendor partner like Phia Group is, and we purchased that company and renamed it CareValent. So CareValent is where a team of professionals do outreach, mostly on the physician side, to ensure that a member has access and understands what to do with a provider. If you don't have a PPO, and we don't use PPOs in general for any of our solutions, so we don't put a physician PPO in place. We believe that if you're going to go RBP, right? At the end of the day, you're going to end up with safe harbor physicians, safe harbor facilities. You're going to end up with direct contracts with folks, and so there's no reason for you to have a PPO. It kind of gets in the way of doing your own direct contracting strategy and fulfilling those items. The point is to make sure that members have access and that we can connect members to the provider. That's the most important thing, because most people want to go to a list. They want to see a list of providers. They don't understand how RBP works. Trying to undo 25 years of managed care.
So basically you hire people that are the exact opposite of me to work there and help these patients go through the process.
That's the interview process, Adam.
Like Morgan Freeman voice, basically.
Is that right, Greg?
You want somebody to hold your hand through the process, and that's what those professionals down in Florida do, is hold each other's hands. You hold people's hands in a different way, Adam.
Yeah, it's more of like a clench. It's not a hold.
So, Greg, you mentioned a couple differentiators, and I wanted to dig a little bit deeper. One, you mentioned physician PPOs, and you hear that more often now than before. People are sort of layering it onto these types of programs. In your mind, what is a physician PPO? And importantly, why do you choose not to access them?
Okay, so many groups that we compete with, vendors that we compete with in the marketplace, chose to use a physician PPO. What we see is that the physician networks available in the marketplace are getting thinner, right? So hospitals, that's who owns most of the physicians. 70% of all physicians are employed by hospitals. So if you have hospitals that are contracted, they're going to make sure that you're contracted for facilities and physicians. You can't really parse one from the other. And so the networks tend to be very thin, especially in large areas, Dallas, Chicago, Miami, etc. These places just, you don't have the ability to have a large physician panel like you would in a PPO. So there's nothing worse than having a thin panel of physicians and then everybody else is out of network. No network is better than out of network with a thin panel of physicians.
So, Greg, you bring up an interesting point, that being that most of these physicians' offices are owned by the hospital, by the facility. But setting that aside for now, just looking at the amount that's being paid, my understanding of a PPO, in general, PPOs for two purposes, the discount and a contractual prohibition on balance billing. We realize that the discount's often inflated price, so it's nullified. So really the only value left in a PPO is that contractual prohibition. Based on what I've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's very little balance billing. Physicians, generally, they'll accept the reference-based price without balance billing. So what do you really gain from having a PPO?
We think it's a push. So you don't gain anything from it. The downside, I think that most folks look and say, you have you're going to have balanced billing, and I said you have less balanced billing with an RBP program on physicians than you do with a PPO. Look at anesthesiologists, your hospital-based physicians, ER physicians, the same kinds of problems of out-of-network doctors that you have, today in a PPO. Get solved differently, I think more effectively with a reference pricing program, because you're treating really all physicians all the same. The pricing is not that much different in terms of what's acceptable from a physician's perspective on a contracted physician.
So I have a question for you then, because you're talking about, how it's a push. So really, ultimately, what we're worried about is the balance billing from the facility. So that being said, how much balance billing is there actually? What's the rate at which you're seeing balance billing? And the follow-up question is that affected by the actual reference-based pricing rate? If percent of Medicare, whatever it is you're using as your parameters for pricing, how does the adjustment on that impact that balance billing rate?
Okay, so we see in general somewhere between about a 1.5% to 2% of all claims. Okay, to compare apples and apples. About 7% of facility claims get a balance bill, right? And so there's a level of appeal process. We take Phia's content, load it into our CareValent software, and we respond in letters. What we do well is manage the process of balance bill. It comes in as an appeal, and they're trying to get money from somebody else other than the member. The facility doesn't want to try and collect from Joe, right? Joe is not the guy that they're looking for money. They want money from the employer, from the plan, from an insurance company, right? That's where the money's at. Joe's not going to pay them. And so they're trying to understand how to get money from Joe in that process. And then we reaffirm how that is not available in I call it a Joe Friday way, right? So we just give them the facts, explain the facts over and over and over again. And I'd say 50 to 65% of the time, in that range, depending on the group and geography and the like, we are successful at CareValent in eliminating the balance bill for the member.
So one of the things that you mentioned before was the fact that because of the way you do things and the fact that you own a lot of the pieces, that your fee is competitive, but we didn't really get into that. What does that mean? Does that mean your percent of savings that you charge is less? I mean, what does it mean to have a competitive fee?
So what we believe is that it needs to be more like a PPM fee that you would pay a PPO. Percent of savings and percent of charges, we believe, has an adverse incentive for the company to operate to solve this problem. We believe that we give value for that on a PPM basis. It's budgetable, and folks respond to it because that's really how they're getting paid today. No percent of charges or percent of savings is an artificial construct, because charges are an artificial construct. And so if you base your price on what the charge is for the provider, we're really exacerbating the issue that we're trying to solve in the marketplace for RBP anyway.
who's using your product, who's using your service, and more importantly, Greg, do you think that they're the best user? So sometimes the most common or popular user might not be the one that it's most catered to. So I guess it's a two-part question. Who's using it and who should be using it?
So we started off selling to third-party administrators as a mechanism. I don't have a huge, we didn't have a large sales team with footprint across the United States. We chose to partner with local TPAs and let them drive, the business through their broker community and support them in that. As we have raised our profile with Payer Compass, then what we're able to do is marry up those brokers to our local market TPAs. We believe that we make a good partner with the TPA. We believe that in the long run, brokers need to find a home for their groups. They may choose 3 TPAs that they want to do business with us with, but believe that that's a better solution in terms of trying to reach out to the groups themselves and move them toward an RBP solution. We do need a good TPA partner, and we believe that working with the TPA gets us further along than it would be if we went around the TPA directly to the broker or benefit consultant community and pulled the group through to that.
Hey, Greg, this is Brady. I have one last question for you. And I know you said before that it's becoming harder to administer an RBP program, but as you look at the landscape today, as you look at some states which are passing laws sort of preventing balance billing in certain cases, like emergency care or for providers that are in network facilities, and you look at some of the more high-profile lawsuits being filed where courts are being asked more and more to look at balance billing cases. Are you encouraged at all, the future of balance billing? Do you see more regulatory action, more legislative action, or maybe even more judicial action on curbing balance bills as we move forward in the future?
Well, obviously, I believe that the future for people to understand what price is getting better play in the courts. I think that from California to Texas, in other states, that as more and more rulings, laws determine that bill charges don't matter, then RBP will move up the scale. Bill charges don't matter. Price matters, and that's what people need to focus on. That's what we focus on, is building from a price up as opposed to charge down.
All right, guys. So thanks so much. Adam, you want to close us out?
As always, on behalf of Ron Peck, Brady Bizzarro, and myself, Adam Russo, thank you so much for empowering your plans with the Phia Group. Have a great day.
Thank you.